Could there be changes coming in the Red Sox front office? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin. It feels like it's been a little bit here since we've heard any sort of rumors about the Red Sox wanting to switch up their baseball operations. But over the last 48 hours, a couple of different rumors have popped up, and they're really interesting when it comes to how it could affect the front office of this Red Sox team, right? One of them feels like a bit more of a realistic possibility for bringing into the Boston Red Sox. The other one feels like a little bit of a pipe dream, but could be an absolutely perfect match made in heaven type fit. So what we are going to do in today's video is we're going to talk about, one, what these rumors look like. We're going to talk about who was mentioned, what they could bring to the Red Sox, and why the Red Sox may be interested in them. We're also going to break down the validity of these rumors, how likely it is that the Red Sox are actually involved, and we're going to be talking about, obviously, how all of this affects the 2024 Red Sox and years to come as well. But before we get into that, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so like I said, there were two big names mentioned over the last 48 hours in terms of possible people the Red Sox are looking at. The first one came from a Bob Nightingale article where he essentially did a little bit of a Q&A, right? He took the biggest questions going into the offseason, and he did his best to answer each and every single one of them. Now, one of them had to do with a particular GM by the name of David Stearns. David Stearns had been with Milwaukee for a while. He stepped down, and now he's looking for a new job. And while in this article, Bob Nightingale mentioned that David Stearns is a heavy favorite to sign with the New York Mets to take over baseball operations there. There's one sentence in this article that should have every Red Sox fan's attention, and that is the fact that he also mentioned in the same sentence that while David Stearns is a favorite to sign with the New York Mets, rumors persist that the Red Sox could be in the mix as well. That's a really heavy statement for Red Sox fans, right? Because that could signal an entire change of this front office just based on that one sentence alone. And for me, there are three particular things that I'm pulling out of this one singular sentence. The first is obviously the source, right? Bob Nightingale is a respected journalist. He's made a great living being a baseball journalist and detailing what's going on in Major League Baseball. But at the same time, too, Bob Nightingale's kind of infamous for putting out a bit of misleading information. Maybe not on purpose, right? It seems like he's really quick to the trigger, and it ends up that maybe the information isn't entirely accurate. Maybe something falls through and it ends up going another way. But there have been a lot of instances here where Bob Nightingale's been a bit wrong with his predictions. So in my opinion, the first thing we need to look at here is the source, right? Whether or not Bob Nightingale is accurate with this reporting is a bit of a question mark on whether or not the Red Sox are actually looking to change up their front office. The second thing that immediately comes to mind for me when I read this sentence is, what would this mean for the Red Sox, right? Why would the Red Sox want to make this change? I know a lot of people who watch this channel aren't the biggest fans of Chaim Bloom. In fact, a lot of people hate Chaim Bloom in the front office. There are a lot of people who watch this channel who love Chaim Bloom in the front office, and there are a lot of people in sort of the same boat as me where you're somewhere in the middle, right? Maybe leaning one side or the other, but you're not completely in, you're not completely out. You just sort of wait and see what happens type mode, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So there are going to be a lot of differing opinions on what David Stearns could mean for the Boston Red Sox, but when you break it down a little bit, David Stearns is definitely a really excellent head of baseball operations option, right? He did a really great job in Milwaukee, specifically with Milwaukee's pitching staff, which the Red Sox could really need right now, right? He built up a pitching staff essentially based solely on homegrown players, and for a while there, it was one of the best pitching staffs, if not the best pitching staff in all of Major League Baseball. That was sort of the highlight of David Stearns' tenure with the Milwaukee Brewers, right? His sort of philosophy was, we're going to build around young talent, we're going to inject a couple of short-term contracts here and there with veteran players, and we're going to be a contender, and he did exactly that. He had winning seasons for most of the years he was with Milwaukee. He was in the playoffs from 2018 to 2021. He's considered one of the best GMs in all of Major League Baseball. So while it could be a bit of an exciting change for the Boston Red Sox, my question here is, can David Stearns take this Red Sox team to the next level, right? Could he end up bringing this team from where they are now to a true long-term sustainable contender? And sometimes when we're talking about that, the grass isn't always greener, because when you're looking at it, and for fans that don't like the way that Chaim Bloom goes about his business, David Stern is very, very similar, if not the exact same, right? What we just mentioned, the building from the youth, injecting a couple of veteran short-term contracts within it, is essentially what Chaim Bloom has been doing over the last couple of years, right? So my big question here with David Stearns is, can he take it to the next level? And to be honest with you, I don't know if we have an answer to that because we've never seen David Stearns operate in a larger market, right? Milwaukee doesn't have the same resources that the Red Sox have, right? So what does he look like with a bigger market? And that to me is the biggest question with what kind of impact this could make on the Red Sox. Now, the third thing I pulled out of this is this the right move? Would this make sense for this Red Sox team? And I think when we're talking about whether or not the Red Sox move on from Chaim Bloom, I'm open to it, right? I'm not sitting here saying Chaim Bloom needs to be here for a super long period of time. But when we're talking about moving on from Chaim Bloom, what I don't want the Red Sox to do is make a move strictly based on PR, right? Strictly based on, okay, we want to appease the fan base. We're tired of everyone hating us. Let's make a move just to make a move and end up in the same place you were in for the last couple of years. And that could possibly be what David Stern is, because again, there are question marks surrounding what he looks like in a larger market, right? He's made some iffy trades with the Milwaukee Brewers. He's never really made that big signing unless you count Christian Yelich, who took a huge hometown discount. So when we're looking at the Red Sox replacing Chaim Bloom, in my opinion, it needs to be a guy who can immediately elevate this team, right? Who you know is going to be able to take what Chaim Bloom has built and bring it to the next level. And I'm not entirely sure David Stearns is the guy to do that. So there were a lot of different things to come out of this one sentence by Bob Nightingale. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, David Stearns, again, super respected, one of the better GMs in all of baseball, but there are still question marks surrounding him. And to me, if you're the ownership of the Boston Red Sox, you don't want question marks anymore, right? You don't want to, okay, let's hope and see that this guy can handle a larger market. Let's hope and see that this guy can make the big trade. He can make the big signing. They want a yes, this guy is going to be able to take this team and bring it into the next generation and bring it into contention for the next 10, 15 years. And I don't know if David Stearns is that guy. We don't know if he is or he isn't. And to me, that's the biggest problem with the David Stearns rumors. But David Stearns wasn't the only name mentioned recently, and this name is a bit of a different story. On the most recent Name Redacted podcast, they also broke down this Red Sox rumor. But on top of breaking down the David Stearns stuff, they also mentioned another name, a name that Red Sox fans are super familiar with, and that is Theo Epstein. Jared Carrabis brought up Theo Epstein and said that, hey, it's not a 0% chance that the Red Sox can't get Theo Epstein back, and that immediately should get Red Sox fans excited, right? Because Theo Epstein is the top of the top. He's the cream of the crop. He is the godfather of analytics, of being the best GM in Major League Baseball. I don't really have to explain to you his track record, right? You guys saw what he did in the 2000s to the Boston Red Sox. He is considered one of, if not the best GM in a very long time. And the fact that it's not a 0% chance that Theo Epstein could come back could be an entirely different conversation, because all the question marks I had with David Stern, the problems and concerns I had with bringing in David Stern, there are none with Theo Epstein, right? In my opinion, if the Red Sox can get Theo Epstein back, do it. Do it immediately. Get Theo Epstein in this front office. Let him take over all of the pillars that Chaim Bloom has built for the Boston Red Sox and see what he can do with it, because I have full faith in Theo Epstein. The problem with this, right, is that Jared Carrabis made it very clear that this was a long shot, that this was just smoke, that there was no concrete evidence that the Red Sox are actually pursuing Theo Epstein. So I don't want to get my hopes up, right? I don't want to sit here and I don't want to get your hopes up either of saying, yeah, the Red Sox could be in on Theo Epstein. I just wanted to throw that name out there because it's very interesting in terms of what the Red Sox could be planning on doing with Chaim Bloom this offseason. So I think when we're looking at these rumors overall, right, when we're looking at both the David Stearns mention in that one sentence in a Bob Nightingale article, and when we're looking at the Theo Epstein sort of smoke, the little traces of smoke that Carrabis talked about in his podcast, right, it's interesting. It's very, very interesting to me. I don't know how much stake I'm going to put into these rumors until maybe there's more information put out there, right? I wouldn't go celebrating one way or the other just yet, but I do find it very interesting interesting that going into a 2024 offseason where you have one of the most pivotal off seasons we've had for the Boston Red Sox in a very long time, that we're starting to see these rumors pop up. Does it mean that there are questions within ownership of whether or not Chaim Bloom can actually take this team to the next level? Because right now, right, that's sort of the biggest question mark, right? Regardless of whether or not you like Chaim Bloom, regardless of whether or not you like the direction of the Boston Red Sox, the big question here is whether or not Chaim Bloom can take what he's built, which is undeniably a young, talented core, a lot of money off the books, in a year where you're under the luxury tax, and utilize all of those resources, both cash-wise and player-wise, to make your team a legitimate long-term contender. Because ultimately, right, that was the goal Chaim Bloom set out to build for the Boston Red Sox. And right now, it feels like he's knocking on the doorstep. But the question is, one, can he actually bring it into reality? And two, does ownership trust him enough to do that? And I think that's sort of what the biggest question marks here are surrounding Chaim Bloom. And I think that's why you're starting to see these rumors start to pop up, right? Whether or not this is actually a legitimate possibility with David Stearns, where was it just a tactic to try and get more money from the Mets and see if they can bring up their contract a little bit? Or did the Red Sox actually reach out, and are they still reaching out, right? And then with Theo, how much of a possibility is it actually? Again, I would guess it's probably right around 1%. It probably, like Carabas said in his podcast, started off as a conversation over dinner, and then that guy tells somebody, and then that guy tells somebody, right? It started off as a sort of a game of telephone here to get to this point, but overall, it is still interesting that we're starting to see these rumors pop up. Now, in my opinion, in terms of what the Red Sox should do, I would give Chaim Bloom this offseason, right? Obviously, there have been missteps along the way. Things that I personally didn't love what Chaim Bloom did. Obviously, things that you guys did not want him to do. And then obviously things ownership, most importantly, was a bit upset about, right? They were pretty public after this deadline that they weren't super happy with how Chaim Bloom handled it. We talked about the deadline last year. We talked about sort of the lack of trading for a big piece so far. But at the same time, too, Chaim Bloom, again, has gotten you kind of to the 10-yard line when it comes to being a legit competitor. The question is whether or not he can actually do that. If I'm ownership, right, I am giving him those 10 yards. I'm saying, look, you have this offseason, you've got the resources, both player-wise and cash-wise, because we were under the luxury tax this year, to go out and improve this team to the point where they could be legitimate contenders for a long period of time. And I think that legitimately centers around how Chaim Bloom can structure this rotation, which is why I find the David Stern rumors very interesting, right? He has a knack for really developing and creating great rotations. It's interesting that they're connected in a year where Chaim Bloom really has to build out this rotation. We could be looking at very similar problems to what we saw in 2023 in 2024 and beyond. So if I'm the front office, I say, look, Chaim, you've got this offseason. Do what you have to do to give this team a legitimate chance to be contenders, not only for 2024, but for multiple years to come. And that needs to be centered around this rotation. Can Chaim Bloom make the signing that we all want him to make? Can Chaim Bloom make the trade that we've sort of been waiting for, right? He came in as sort of this trade guru of sorts that was talked about that, hey, this guy could be potentially a guy who trades and fleeces teams, and the Red Sox come out easily on top. Where is that trade, and when is it coming, right? In my opinion, 2024 is the most pivotal year for the Red Sox in a while, and I would give Chaim Bloom that opportunity to either sink or swim his future with this team, right? If he doesn't do well in the offseason, fine. Let's move on from him. Let's go and do something else. Let's take this team in another direction. But if he does do well, okay, great. Look, this is clearly, you can clearly start to see the vision take place here. And then maybe it's time for a little bit of a longer look with Chaim Bloom. But I think overall, when we're looking at these rumors, I'm personally not taking a ton of stock in them right now. I think they're more so just rumors to either get an advantage with another team, or they're just sort of smoke and maybe there's no fire. But if more does come out, obviously we'll cover it here. And then again, I think overall, if the Red Sox are planning on making a change, I'm open to it, right? I'm not one of those guys who's like, this needs to happen or this can't happen. I'm sort of in the middle here. I'm open to a change with the front office structure of the Boston Red Sox, But again, we talked about it when we talked about David Stearns, right? It would be stupid, in my opinion, for the ownership of this team to just make a decision to make a decision, right? Bring in a guy like David Stearns who has a high upside, but has way too many question marks in such a pivotal year, in my opinion, to make a legitimate difference over what Chaim Bloom could possibly do. So in my opinion, again, I would give Chaim Bloom the offseason. I don't think ownership is going to move off of Chaim Bloom, but again, if they do, this needs to be a slam dunk. It is interesting that these rumors have popped up, and I think it could be a real indication as to how important this offseason is for the front office and for Chaim Bloom specifically. But that's just my opinion, so let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think of all this? What do you think of the rumors? What do you think of the validity of them? What do you think about the possibility of bringing someone else in? What do you think about Chaim Bloom's job security going into the 2024 offseason? Let me know all your thoughts on the latest Red Sox rumors in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.